Acompáñenme a darle una cálida bienvenida a las tres personas responsables de crear esta magia todos los días. Bienvenida, Lynda, Bill y Eduardo.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Eduardo? Thank you so much. We are so excited to be here today. Thank you for that introduction, and I'd also like to introduce a little bit more of Bill Sykes. He is on my team. We travel the globe together doing presentations like this and training, but this is the first time we've ever been to Mexico, and we are just ecstatic to be here. So thank you so much for inviting us. And Eduardo, he is our key contact here in Mexico. He's actually been in this business probably longer than I have as it relates to characters, but we have enjoyed the partnership over all of these years with Eduardo. He is your point of contact, he is mine within the region, and I'm so glad that I can actually be here in his city today. So thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. So I must confess, this is a first for me. It's a first, many firsts of being here, first of all in Mexico City, presenting to this many people, wearing a lavalier mic. I've never had to do this before, but I'm very excited to be here. And I hope to share with you some character knowledge that maybe you're familiar with, or maybe you've seen, maybe some things that you haven't seen before, and maybe some things that will remind you of something, remind you of that connection that you have with the characters. And I have to confess, I'm a bit nervous. I've never presented in front of this many people, so I'm going to have to refer to my notes because I have 2 hours worth of content that I hope you're going to enjoy. But I want to tell you a little bit about the area in which I work. We're part of Walt Disney Imagineering, so we're not part of Walt Disney World or Disneyland or any park for that matter. We're actually a global entity, character programs and development, and our whole agenda is about the Disney characters. So we kind of look at this in two ways. We have a very holistic approach to the characters. We look at what they look like, the costumes that we build, and we also look at how they perform and what they're doing out in the regions. And one of the things that happened several years ago, back in the late 80s, early 90s, is Roy Disney himself actually created CP&D out of a concern that there was not enough oversight in the regions to make sure that the characters and the brand were being watched over carefully. It wasn't that anything was doing anything bad on purpose, it's just that the company was growing so fast and so big that there wasn't enough quality control. So he actually established CP&D. But before I get much further into the presentation, I do want to ask some questions of you, if you don't mind. And I'd actually like to ask, first of all, does everybody love the Disney characters? Yes, that's great. Who has a favorite character? Several of you. Does anyone else have, no one has favorite characters, or you just love them all? Yes. But what I'd like to do is ask a few of you who your favorite character is and why. Marilyn is going to help out, and Eduardo too.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Claro. My favorite character is Merida. Merida.
Merida. Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you like Merida?
Because she's like strong and she has a great character, and I love her costume. I love the way she interacts with the rest of the people. I just been in the park like 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And I saw her for the first time in the park, and she was like sweet but still strong. So I've never seen like a princess playing this role, and I really like her.
Mm-hmm. You like that strong character in her?
Yes.
Yes. Something you could possibly relate to?
To myself.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Who else has a favorite character?
Hi.
Hi.
My favorite character is Tigger.
Tigger? Oh, well, that happens to be Bill's favorite character. Tell me why you like Tigger so much.
I think because he's big with the S.
Yes.
Fefilfo. And I love it because he's like, he really loves life and he's always happy and is, optimistic, and I really love him.
Yep. Yep. Is there something that you can relate to in that?
Probably.
Probably. Who else has a favorite character? What? We'll go on this side.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
My favorite character is Cinderella because
Classic.
Since I was a very little child, I felt like related to her. I'm the middle child, so my mother and my sisters, I have two sisters, they were bullying me all the time. So like they were the stepdaughters and the stepsisters and the stepmother. My mother and my sister were those.
Yes.
And Cinderella was like the perfect dream for me since I was little. I was like crying in my room and thinking about Cinderella. If she had that, then I can have it.
It's wonderful. Thank you. What about on this side again? There's one right here in the middle.
Well, my favorite character is Robin Hood.
Oh, Robin Hood.
Yeah,
Okay.
because since I was also a little child, my dad bought my brother and I this beta movie of Robin Hood, and I used to watch it every single day. So I grew up liking him a lot because he was like this adventurous guy, and he lived in the forest and had his big friend, and this was one of my, and still is one of my favorite characters in Disney.
That's great. Robin, who we hardly see anymore, so I always like it when someone brings up a nostalgic character. That's great. So just like you were telling me with all the characters, probably you can't see as your peers and your partners are telling me these stories, but I ask that question in every presentation I do because I love hearing the stories, first of all. But second, you cannot talk about a Disney character and why you like them without smiling. I dare you. It's not possible. You always smile when you talk about a Disney character, and the reason for that is because they are so relatable. Whether you've grown up on them or your children are growing up on them, they're relatable, and we love them for that reason, because we see a little bit of ourselves in those characters. And guess what? So do our guests. Everything that you're feeling is exactly how our guests feel as well. So that part of that is a legacy that we're upholding, right? It all started with Walt. So one of the things that, since it did start with Walt, I want to share with you this. Can anybody tell me what this picture is from? I'm thinking that you're saying July 17th, 1955, opening day at Disneyland. It's hard to believe that that was our Mickey and Minnie. But Walt had a vision, right? He created some great characters on film, and he wanted to see those characters come to life. Whether it's in the park or in special events internationally, that's what Walt's vision was. But we've come a long way since then, baby. Let me just show you this. But when I ask you the question, how many Mickey Mouse are there really? What's that answer? There is only one, and that's what we share publicly, right? We never want to reveal the magic behind the magic. So how do we do all of this? How have we evolved from that first day in 1955 when those characters, Mickey and Minnie, were walking down the street to what we have today? Again, character programs and development concentrates on only the characters, and we look at it in two ways. Really three if you count the performance side, which I'll address in a minute. But we have a design and development side of our business. That is not my main area of focus, but we're such a small team. I sit in all the meetings. I feel like sometimes I could be a designer. But we're a bi-coastal operation, and we actually have designers in Florida and in California who work very hard on trying to model the walk-around characters to exactly what steps out of those films or what's on the screen on the Disney Channel or any other original place of content that we need to develop from. So with that in mind, the first thing that we do when we think about design is safety. Safety is a number one initiative for us and has been for many years. Obviously, when you put extra weight on a performer that's not natural, we have to be concerned about that. So we actually deal with ergonomic specialists that help us understand about weight displacement and how that affects the body. A lot of people think that the costumes just show up on a rack and really don't understand how we got to that point. But safety and ergonomics are our biggest thing, and we follow a design criteria around these pieces of criteria. Adjustability, weight and distribution is key. Balance is huge for us. Is there too much weight on the head, which is then on the neck, which then relates to back injuries? Range of motion, are they able to move or do they have to walk like this, which I know we've seen some of the characters walk like that in the past. Visibility, can they see? Obviously, we need them to be able to see our guests. And of course, thermal comfort, because again, it's hot. And once we do this, we go through a functional review process with the performers where we help them wear the costume and understand what they're feeling, because just because you try it on for 30 minutes doesn't mean that that's what you're going to feel after 8 hours standing in that costume. So we take a lot of interest in understanding from our performers how it fits, so that we're always trying to, better what we're doing as we're creating these things. Documentation. We document everything. And one of the reasons that we do that is because we have international sites and international special event teams, clearly here in Mexico. The information that we shared is shared with Eduardo on a regular basis so that he has all of this. One of the first things that we do is create a document called Care and Feeding, which really talks about the size of the costume, all of the components on the costume, how to wash the costume, how to take care of it appropriately, and obviously our information if anyone needs any questions answered. Paint documentation. This is huge. The paint that we use on all of the character costumes is really underestimated. All of those paint dots you see there represent every single piece of individual paint that we use for character costumes all over the place. And cosmetology documentation. This one's key. We obviously want our face role performers to look like the role from the film. And in order to do that, the wig, the hair accessory, is a big part of that. And this is where it ends up when we have a buy-off with John Lasseter. I wanted to share this with you as well. Of course, that was Lotso Hug and Bear, one of our favorites. And even though he's a villain, we still love how cute he is when you see him. And I'm guessing that you probably notice within that buy-off, which we have all of our buy-offs with John Lasseter, how everyone was rubbing the fur. We spend a lot of time looking at fur, trying to find the right kind of fur vendors for us. In fact, in the US, a lot of the fur plants have closed up because of the economic crisis, and so we are having to go to China a lot more, and having honestly some real difficulty in finding some of our furs that we need. And I'm going to throw out a random question. Who can name for me the 5 senses? See? Hear? Taste? Touch? Smell, right? If you had to guess, because obviously if you were missing one of these senses, it would be hard to adapt, right? But which one do you think is the most underestimated sense for adapting? It's actually touch. Touch is one of the ones, and this was a study done with orphanages around the world. They studied children that were raised in orphanages, especially the ones that were overpopulated. And a lot of that happened in Eastern Bloc countries years ago in Europe. And the babies that were put in these orphanages, there were so many of them that they literally laid in their cribs for hours without any human contact. And when they were fed, a bottle was actually taped to their mouth. The bottle was propped up. So they were never held, and they really had a challenge with being touched. And so when they were being adopted, this was the biggest challenge of all, because parents that were looking for a child to adopt wanted to be able to obviously relate to these babies and have a relationship. But when the child couldn't be touched, it's hard to raise a child when you can't hug them, right? So what do our characters do every day? Hug, just like Lotso, Hug and Bear. They hug a whole lot, and that's why furs are very, very, very important to us. We really want that soft, touchy, huggable feel. Sounds kind of silly, but it's true. So next in the evolution of the design process, can anybody tell me what this is? It looks like a big copy machine, doesn't it? And actually, that's exactly what it is. It's a huge 3D copy machine. And this is something that we've just started to engage in the last couple of years. And we have found great benefit from a design process. And the process is called digital design. Now, up to this point, all of the designers, and they still do this, design costumes by hand. Clearly, the models come off of the content that originates from the films or from channel or from books or whatever that is. But they hand draw whatever the design is, and then a sculpt is made. A soft sculpt is made, and then fabric is laid over that sculpt, and then the process begins. So we've done that process for many, many years until we checked into digital design. And the 3D copier that I showed you is called a rapid prototype machine. Basically, what you do is you take all the materials, pour it into a copier, just like you would pour something in like a Chia Pet. You pour it into the machine, and it literally grows ahead. Can you believe that? I'm going to show you. Jake and the Neverland Pirates. You guys seen this on Disney Channel, I presume? Do you have that here in Mexico? Very popular, very fun little show. Jake is the first one that we decided to try this design process with. And here's how it starts. You take the animated images from the content from the Disney Channel, and you start to create digital files. Now, not anyone can just do this. We actually hired a digital designer to help us with this, who's very good at his job. And so he started creating these digital files, and that digital file, because that big machine has a computer in it, you load in those digital files, you pour in the material, you line up all of your lines and figures. I know these have technical names, and you grow ahead. And here's the unique thing about doing this. Prior to doing something like this where it is consistent with every head that we make, we would make heads sometimes individually or create a tool to try and achieve this. The tools are very expensive, and if you know anything about fabrication, you understand what tools are. Just to create the tool is huge. But when a computer can do this, and it literally comes out of this 3D printer, what we gain is a lot of consistency, and also all of that other slide I showed you with all of the grid lines, that shows where the performer, because we use avatars, fits inside the head. So we know exactly how big the head should be, how big the eyes should be, how big the mouth opening should be, so the performer can see out of it, can breathe appropriately, etc. We didn't gain all of that consistency in the prior process, so this has worked out really, really well for us. And here he is. That's the first one that we've made, and since then we've made Sophia the First and Doc McStuffins. So we're very excited about that. Another part of our evolution process is puppetry. We weren't in the puppetry business for a while, but because the puppets are also Disney characters, because to any children that goes to a puppet show, it doesn't matter if they're the live walk-around life-size or if there's the little puppet that's coming up from behind the wall, they're still a Disney characters. So puppetry is a huge business for us now, and we actually have a master puppeteer on our staff. He's a great puppet designer, comes up with all kinds of new things. And this year, these are the puppets that he created for the Disney Playhouse in the parks. Very, very popular. It's kind of standing room only when you get to these shows. Articulated characters. How many have seen any articulated characters? Good, a few of you. Again, the next evolution of what our characters are going to be. And this has been something we've been working on for probably 15 years. And when we first started it, we started it very simply. It actually came from puppet maneuvers, if you will. So we started with what we call bike handles, where the performer would have these levers in their hand, and they would and the wires would go up their arms, up their back, and into the head for headgear. And when they operate these bike handles, the mouth would open and the eyes would blink, and it worked very well for us for a while. But as soon as we knew that we could articulate a head, it actually took off from there. And what I want to share with you now is a couple pieces of footage, to show you what that evolution is. The first one is Baloo, and he actually is doing the second. After the bike pedals, we did finger paddles. So that's where we went next, where all you had to do was just touch a finger paddle, and the articulation would happen. So I want to share that with you now. And what we had was really what we call the static head. And we still have that today. But when you have a character on stage or in a presentation for any length of time, they start to become just dead looking. There's nothing to them. So the articulation really helps us bring those characters to life. It really helps them feel more real, and that's kind of what we're in the business to do, is to make the characters as real as possible for our guests. So this next piece of video I wanted to show you is the next generation of the articulated head, and it's pre-programmed. We actually found some equipment that we could fit up inside the head that was light enough, small enough, and didn't really make a lot of noise, in which we could entirely program those heads where the performer just needed to dance and animate, and the head did all of the work, so that we weren't putting a lot of stress, again, going back to those bike handles in the past of what we were doing. And this is King Louie. When the Baloo performer was actually having to control the articulation, if you watched it enough, you could see where he missed a few of the lines. But our average guest isn't going to see that. But again, in our, constant pursuit of perfection, we had to go to the next level where we could pre-program the head so the performer wouldn't have to worry about that. So the Baloo appearance was on the Disney Dream, right, Bill? And King Louie is at the Magical Map show at Disneyland. So we were able to get that footage for you to see. Next in our story of evolution, interactive characters. Has anyone heard about this at all? Oh, good. Then it'll be hopefully a surprise. It's actually a game changer is what this is. The company, again, has tried to figure out how can we make the characters more relatable. We love them, and they're enduring, of course, but how can we better connect to our guests on a regular basis? And interactive characters is what we decided to pursue. Some of what we brought to the table, along with our WDI R&D partners, was a lot of technology and a lot of know-how in how our guests interact with our characters, the kinds of things that they say to our characters, how believable our characters are, and they'll tell them their life stories sometimes, especially the little kids. It's great. So in just a few weeks at Walt Disney World, we're actually debuting a brand new attraction. I wanted to share it with you today, even though it hasn't, we haven't announced it yet officially, but this is a big deal for us. And part of it really is the fact that Mickey talks. But he's always talked, right? He's talked in our heads, he's talked on tape, he's talked, we've seen him in cartoons. However, we've never been able to converse with Mickey. We've never been able to actually have a real conversation, a back and forth. And that's why what we've been able to do here is a real game changer for us. So first I want to share some footage with you on even back in the day when they were making movies with Walt and Mickey's voice. Here's how it was done. We actually only have one character voice for Mickey Mouse. Can anybody tell me why?
As far as I know, Walt did a lot of auditions and he never found out who was the perfect character, and they say Mickey was his alter ego. That's why we never had another voice rather than Walt for Mickey Mouse.
Yes, Walt was the original voice for Mickey Mouse, and that carried on until, he passed away. But just prior to that, he realized that when he's gone, who's going to do the voice? So that voice responsibility has been handed down over decades, but only one person at a time has the voice of Mickey Mouse, for the company. So I think we're to the fifth person now that has that voice, and he actually partnered with us on this project. And I want to be able to share with you first this video. We have not shared this publicly, but I wanted to be able to let you all see what's about to debut in the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World in the next few weeks. This is a very, very exciting time for us because we're getting ready to debut this in the park. It will probably also appear at Disneyland, and we'll go from there. But the work that's gone into this project has been tremendous. What you saw was actually our test and adjust phase. So we've been testing it in the Magic Kingdom to surprise and delight our guests. We actually sort of pulled them out of line and send them into a separate room to meet Mickey and have this experience. And all the feedback that we have gotten back from our guests when they leave the room, some of it is very comical because they really don't know what's happening when Mickey engages in a conversation with them because it just is so normal. Again, Mickey has always talked. He's always talked in their minds, but he's always talked. So a lot of what we hear when they exit the room is, wait a minute, he was talking to us, right? Like, did I dream that? Did he say something about our anniversary, birthday? Whatever that is, they're just kind of in shock. The way that we do it, honestly, is pretty complicated behind the scenes. We actually have an entire room dedicated to watching who comes into the room next, understanding if they're having a birthday or a celebration, or if it's a family, or if they're, a guest from Brazil or anywhere else in the world. And if I could show you a picture of the panel, what you would see is a ginormous panel with all of these colored buttons. And we pre-recorded many, many responses to our guests because we know how they interact with characters. It's the same way they interact with our face characters. We took that conversation model and put it into technology. I'm oversimplifying it, but it actually works. It's really something, and our guests are loving it. So I do believe it's a game changer for us. So we're very excited to debut that soon. So next on the agenda is what's in development now. I was hoping to have a lot more to share with you today, but depending on where we are in our production cycle is when I can share photos and those kinds of things. But I will be able to tell you that obviously this fall, in the next few weeks actually, we're going to be debuting Frozen. How many people have seen anything about Frozen? Good. Good. I'm actually very excited about this film. I've seen it in its entirety, and I actually think it's really, really good. It's very funny. And we, of course, are very excited to present the characters in the park, but first I'll just share this little trailer with you in case you haven't seen it. And here are Anna and Elsa. This film is about a sister relationship. There's a lot of interesting storylines throughout this whole film. I won't be a spoiler for you because it's actually, I think, pretty phenomenal. I was hoping to get a picture of Olaf because we are actually creating Olaf as a puppet. So he will be making appearances at Walt Disney World and Disneyland in a puppet sort of audio animatronic format, but we didn't have any photos in time to be able to put into the presentation, but we're very excited about this. At Walt Disney World, they're actually going to be appearing at the Norway Pavilion at Epcot. So very excited about this. Disney Princess. What's Disney without a princess, right? But it's been years since we actually, redid the costumes for the Disney princesses. And we have gotten certainly feedback over the years about a little outdated, those kinds of things. But Consumer Products actually did some research with moms and children on how they feel about the princesses. And of course, we know that little girls love the princesses and their pretty, sparkly dresses. So there was an initiative that was put forth, a corporate initiative, to really take a different look at the Disney princesses. Consumer Products went down a little bit further down the path than we did, but we did partner to see what we could do from an updated look perspective. So this entire past year, we have been rolling out the new princess looks, and if you haven't seen all of them, this is our new Belle, our new Cinderella, and as you can see, they're maintaining the silhouette of what they had previously, but their fabrics are a little more sparkly, a little more effervescent. Ariel is about to roll out very soon, and Snow White after that. So these are our new princess looks. And then finally, for design, Marvel. We've all been anticipating what this means for the company with this acquisition of Marvel, and quite frankly, I don't know what it means. Because Marvel is still Marvel, and so this is a brand new partnership. And much like the partnership that we had with Pixar, at first it was, there was probably some trust issues, like what are you going to do? Disney's going to take us over. We're not going to be Pixar anymore. I'm sure that Marvel feels the same way. But what we're trying to do, obviously, is support the brand, add new life into the brand, and those kinds of things. So Captain America, this is our first Marvel costume that we've created. He actually appeared at D23 at Disneyland, which is the big fan convention, back in August, and was extremely popular. His wait was over 2.5 hours to meet Captain America. So we were very excited to debut him there. And we are currently working on Thor and Iron Man kind of simultaneously, and we'll be releasing those costumes soon. I'm not sure everywhere where they're going to appear. We know that Captain America, his first appearance actually, is going to be on the cruise line, which seems a little interesting for sure, but they have created a whole environment for him in the Kids Club to have Captain America appear there. So this partnership obviously will be evolving over time to see what we're going to be doing with all of the product that they offer. So that's it on the design side. So, programs. That's what I do. I manage the program development for the global community. I'm also do the brand piece, globally as well. So one of the things that we do, back to that holistic approach to characters, you can have the best costume in the world, but if the performer or the performance is not good, it's not Disney. And conversely, you can have a fantastic performer be in a character costume, but if that quality of that costume isn't good, it's not Disney. So that's how we approach characters. We look at the whole thing to make sure that it's Disney in quality. So in order to get our performers ready, we actually, I think the button, there it is, create performer training materials. Very easy. But the reason that we do this from a global central conduit perspective is because we want Mickey to be Mickey to be Mickey, no matter where he is in the world. Would you all agree with that? That's right. Mickey should always be Mickey, and so goes the rest of the characters. So if we have one consistent training material, then everybody receives that, and all of our trainers around the world have access to us if they have questions around the training materials, but then they are the ones that train the performers. Disney character training, I'll go into that in a minute. Special projects, we get involved in special projects all the time, and character brand management, again, is a part of my role daily. So the performer training materials. We create casting guidelines first and foremost because our talent casting teams around the globe need to know how to select the right performer for the right role. So from a face character perspective, just like Mickey should be Mickey should be Mickey, the costume helps a lot with that. From a performer perspective as it relates to face, we need to have them look like the character as much as possible. So these casting guidelines help with that. We also create profiles and biographies for every new film that comes out, just like with Frozen. Anna and Elsa have 30-some page biographies that talk about the storyline, that talk about the relationships in the film, that talk about what the motivation is for the characters, because the performers need to know who they are so that they can make that character as real as possible to the guests, that they're not just out there saying, "Hi, want a photo?" which is what they're not supposed to say, but a lot of times that's what happens. And then finally, we create training videos, and this happens a lot for our international sites where it's easier to be able to watch performers in action than sometimes it gets lost in translation with the documents. But everybody receives the materials that we provide globally, and all for trying to create a moment like this. Now, you would think that this is staged. This is not staged at all. This is actually at a greeting at Disneyland where a little girl stood in line and was dressed exactly like that to meet her favorite Rapunzel and Flynn. But it's a picture-perfect moment, and what we're always constantly trying to achieve with our characters is to create a magical moment like this. So Disney character training. Disney character training has existed from the time Disneyland opened. But what didn't exist was a global character training program. Disneyland obviously started the first characters out on set meeting guests, and from there Walt Disney World was opened, and so on and so forth. but the global character training program actually was put together by pieces and parts from different parks. And what we ended up with was training programs that were like 25 pages long up to 250 pages long, which really implies inconsistency. So we pulled all of that character training in from around the globe and created one global character training program that we've actually launched a couple years ago. We started really at Walt Disney World first, our biggest park with the most characters, and it was highly successful. From there we went to Disneyland. It's on the cruise ship, it's at Alani. Our Feld performers are being trained this way. We went to Disneyland Paris this year. Bill spent a month there doing the install to this program. So we're very excited, and we're actually going to Hong Kong in 2014 to launch the program there. And Eduardo and I were just talking this morning that he's going to come to Florida, and we're going to start to do some stuff with Eduardo too, that he's had materials all along, but what we want to do is engage him more in this. And so he's very excited about that potential, and so are we. And here's a look at it. This is what we provide. We provide all of the collateral, this facilitator guide. So it's kind of training in a box, except it's a lot more complicated than that. But we have great trust in all of our key partners out there to deliver this message appropriately. Special projects. Because we're known as the character experts and we know who the characters are and their personalities, we get involved a lot in special projects. A lot of calls from marketing to help them when they want something to do with characters. And one of our biggest challenges was something that they called augmented reality. And it was a special event. It was a 3-day event up in New York City. They didn't quite know how to pull it off as it relates to how the characters should be in act. So we spent 3 weeks pulling all of this together, but I wanted to share with you the video that culminated in this project. So we spent 3 weeks with the characters over at Disney Hollywood Studios in front of a green screen, creating all of those interactions without anyone there. But we know how our guests interact, and our characters interact with our guests, so we created all of the interactions, all of the beats that go with that, filmed it on green screen. Special effects were added. We actually worked with a company out of London who are experts in this augmented reality experience. And then we took the characters also, about 5 of them, up to New York with us and also created live moments because we had a green screen up there in an office where the guests could show up. So it was highly, highly successful. In fact, it's circulated on YouTube so much. I just got a call on Friday from the Netherlands, from our Disney offices there, and they want to create a similar experience in one of their malls, actually several of their malls in the Netherlands, because they do a whole Disney overlay to the mall for the holiday season. And one of the things they want to do is utilize this footage and create the same experience. So and it's actually providing a lot of mileage for us, which is great. New resorts, and of course, anytime there's a new resort, we get to be involved, which is great. And Alani was really kind of the first resort where the characters, we certainly have characters at Vero Beach. We've had characters before at Hilton Head, but this remote location in Hawaii was one of the first that we've done in this capacity with this many characters. So you can see Mickey, Minnie, Chip, Dale, Goofy, Donald, and Stitch all appear at the Alani Resort. And again, I think Bill was there for probably 6 to 8 weeks. Getting the program up and running. I went over for a couple weeks to assist with food and beverage, guest service managers, because a lot of people in the operation need to understand how to interact with Disney characters so that they aren't saying, oh, Mickey's got to go take a break, or he's got to go take a breather or take his head off. We want to make sure that our partners know how to also talk about the characters the right way and to respond to our guests and keep everything in story and in character. So Alani was a huge success for us, and we still obviously talk to them on a regular basis to assist them. And what's coming up in 2015? Shanghai. This is probably the biggest undertaking we will ever have because they are onboarding 500 character cast in 2.5 months. That's huge, especially in a culture that really isn't familiar with our brand as much. Obviously, the language is going to be challenging on how we're going to train all of these people. So we've been working on a training plan for a year now, and we'll continue to work on that plan to eventually get to Shanghai to try and get that park open so that Mickey is Mickey, no matter where you go in the world, that he will be the same Mickey in Shanghai that we would see anywhere else. So we're very excited about that, and especially Bill, because he'll be over there for months on end. And just to check, I have 11 minutes left? Yes, okay. Character brand management. Okay, this is one of my most passionate subjects. Again, I do this every single day of my job. I get scripts on my desk. I get calls from all over the world and or emails, whether it's in the park or out of the park, on how to use the Disney characters the right way, or is there a better way to do it? And honestly, I have to tell you, it's one of the most challenging jobs I've ever had, because a lot of people certainly have the best interest of the characters at heart, but they really don't understand how the characters should be used within their story and within their personality. So before I really go into that much further, I want to share 2 stories with you. One is a local story from the Orlando area, because of course Bill and I came from Orlando. I was at home one night, and I was actually, the 11 o'clock news was on. And like a lot of us, we take our work home, and I was sitting in bed, and I was doing some Disney work, and I had the volume turned down. And I happened to look up, and when I looked up, there was a photo of a very elderly gentleman with Mickey Mouse ears on, a Mickey Mouse shirt, and a Mickey Mouse stuffed animal. And I was thinking, oh, what is this? So I grabbed the remote, and I'm turning it up, and I'm listening to this story about this minister. He was a lay minister, very popular, and his whole mission was to take kids to the park, underprivileged children. So he would raise annually all of this money so that he could take children to the park to visit the Disney characters. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, 92 years old, and they called him Disney's greatest fan. And when I looked at him, I was like, he's 92? He looked like he was 9. Again, ears, shirt, Mickey plush. Adorable. Well, the whole point of this story is that he was killed that day. He was killed in an accident by a sheriff who was chasing a bad guy, and they happened to come into an intersection at the same time, where he ran a stop sign and hit this elderly gentleman. And it reminded me, it was, first of all, horribly tragic and sad, but it also reminded me of a piece of footage that we've had in our possession for many years. And we hadn't used it in a while, and I decided to pull that out. And this is where the second story comes in. So for Mickey's 60th birthday, the Walt Disney Company was invited to Russia. Now, Russia was Russia, and then Russia was the Soviet Union, and then Russia was Russia again. So when Russia became Russia again, and they were allowing people to come into their borders in their country, the Walt Disney Company was invited to celebrate Mickey's 60th birthday. And this is a story where Roy Disney Jr. went to the film festival. It was one of the first film festivals that they have ever invited people from outside of their borders. Roy was obviously very nervous, but very honored that he would be invited to Russia to go see this. And as part of the communication, when he got there, they told him they were so excited that he was there, and they had made a film that they wanted to share with him. And Roy immediately thought, oh my gosh, how could they make a film? Like, they haven't had technology, they're not advanced, they've been closed off to the world for all of these years, what can they possibly show me? And Roy, being Roy, was a little concerned that he wouldn't be able to just politely say, oh, that's lovely, thank you very much, that he would be compelled to, maybe critique their film. So he didn't want to see their film right away. His purpose was to show Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And when he got there, he was thinking, okay, these people have never seen anything like it. They will have never seen Snow White before. They're going to be so excited. This is going to be wonderful, awesome, etc. And if you've ever seen any of obviously the big auditoriums or theaters in Russia, they're huge, beautiful. But to Roy's point, the equipment was the little reels of film where you stick the film in and you wind it up, and then it goes to the next thing and it shoots out the projector of the little window. Roy hand-carried these canisters of films and sat up there in that booth because he thought, oh my gosh, what if it breaks? What happens if the equipment, etc. Very nervous. So when he started showing the film, he sat and watched through that little window to see their reaction, and the entire auditorium was filled. All he could see was the back of their heads, but he just knew they would be laughing and applauding and crying. It would be wonderful. And what he saw instead was no one moving. They were completely still. They didn't move. They barely made a sound, and he kept thinking, oh my gosh, they don't get it. They don't understand the story. This doesn't make sense. What am I going to say? So he felt totally dejected when he came down from that little booth. And when he got down to the lobby, he was met by the entourage, the Russian entourage, and again through a translator told Roy, that was fantastic, that was wonderful, that was the best thing we've ever seen. And Roy said, I don't get it. I don't understand. Nobody moved. Nobody said anything. They acted like they didn't like it, and they said, oh, no, no, no. You don't understand. They've seen Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. But what they've seen is bootleg copies, copies upon copies upon copies that were handed from family member to family member underground through back doors because they weren't allowed to have anything like this. But it got into the country, and people kept it quiet, and they made copies for each other and tried to show one another. So basically what they were trying to tell him is that they were just in awe of the color, in awe of seeing the entire film all by itself because they didn't even really have the whole film, just pieces and parts. And so what they really appreciated was to finally see that film. And so in honor of the Disney company and Mickey's 60th birthday, this is what the group made for Roy. Nothing will kill a brand more than a safety concern. And that's why safety at our company is still a number one focus, a number one issue, and we can't forget that. In everything we do, we always have to make sure we're safe, your cast is safe, and certainly the guest is safe. So if I asked you to describe the Disney brand, what words would you use to describe the Disney brand? Magic? Family? Values? Say again? Quality. What words would you use to describe the character brand? What would you say? It's not a trick question. The words actually are the very same. It's one and the same. Can anybody think of a product that is synonymous with its name? I got one for you, knowing that we're running short on time. How many people, when they sneeze, ask for a Kleenex? Kleenex is big in the United States. Is she wearing princess gloves? So again, to my point, so when they lost her gloves and they got princess gloves, I guess they thought it was okay that nobody would know, but actually we know, right? We do know the difference. Who's this? Captain Jack Sparrow. Is it our Captain Jack? Yes? No. Guess what? This is a great look-alike. Right down the road from us in Orlando, Florida is St. Petersburg and Clearwater Beach, and this was an ad that appeared. Infringement, copyright infringement, we deal with that every day. I know you all deal with it here. I know you deal with it in Latin America in a big way. And it's something that we struggle with all the time. And these are the kinds of things that, while the ad is a beautiful ad, we're not selling this. So we always have to be mindful about that. And there's a whole division within our company called infringement that actually deals with this. They don't even respond to you. I just send them everything, and they deal with it. This was a picture that appeared in a very well-known periodical, and I read it, and it talked all about Disney's Mickey and Minnie and the wedding business and all of that stuff, and you would swear that it was ours. And honestly, I've seen a lot of knockoffs, and this one isn't as bad as some of the ones I've seen. And this is the magazine it appeared in. National Geographic, one of the best known magazines around the globe. So always having to be constantly mindful and protective of our brand. And I'm not saying that everybody gets it wrong and we get it right all the time. We actually don't get it right. This was actually sent to me as a request from the animal kingdom with all of the good intentions in mind, because they wanted to do a environmental announcement and the about the conservatory of the condors and how they're becoming extinct. And so Jiminy Cricket certainly is a mascot for environmentality and those kinds of things. And so they sent this to me to say, is this okay? Because we want to use him for our event. And that's when I had to say, no. Can anybody tell me why? It looks kind of ridiculous, right? This is where the message was right. What they wanted to do was a good cause, but using the Disney characters, you know, and not keeping mindful of their story and personality is when we sort of go astray. So that's kind of what it looks like when we get it wrong. But here's what it looks like when we get it right. Are these the Disney characters? How do we know? It's kind of easy because they're standing in front of the iconic castles, right? Makes it easy. But the costumes look great, the animation looks great. We know it's characters. But what if we took them out of their environment? And we do this a lot in special events, and we put them in some obscure place like the Great Wall of China. Would we know it was our characters? Are these the Disney characters? How do we know? We know because of how they're animating, we know because of the quality of their costumes, and we know because of the smiles on these kids' faces. So, how do we manage all of this? We have something called Character Use Guidelines. This is published out of my area along with Corporate Brand Management. And it's a textbook of do's and don'ts, which can be shared with anyone that needs it. But our special event teams have access to all of this because they're the ones executing the events with the characters. But why are we doing this? Why do we have guidelines and rules, as some people call it? It's for one simple reason. What we're trying to create is the suspension of disbelief. We want our guests to believe that the characters are real, and in order to do that, we have to suspend their disbelief and spend for just a moment, in the moment that they're with our characters, and believe, I'm really talking to Mickey Mouse. I'm really meeting Cinderella, and so are my children. It's a big, big thing for us. And so when you think about using the Disney characters, think with that in mind. Always think that the Disney characters are real, because they are. Are we intelligent human beings? Do we know that they're people in costume? Absolutely. But is that what we want to share with our guests? No, we never want to do that. So now it's all about you. I do brand every day in my role, but am I the only one? Who else is a brand steward? Everyone in this room is a Disney brand steward. And because the characters are synonymous with our brand, I nominate all of you to be a Disney brand steward too. So whatever you see, wherever you are in your role, whatever it is you're doing, if you have a question, if you think it doesn't look right, doesn't feel right, number one, it probably isn't. And number two, say something. There's plenty of resources for you all to be able to ask about. And I'm not saying we live in a perfect world and we can do it the way we want to do it every time. There's certainly other big initiatives involved when we're using and promoting our business. But we try as best as we can to always keep the characters magical for our guests. So the last thing I want to share with you, and I know I'm over time, is a video that we created that sort of gives you a global perspective of the Disney characters worldwide. We actually created it for our training teams, but I wanted to share this last look with you. Thank you all for, first of all, paying such great attention for the last couple hours and participating and clapping in all the right places. Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be with you today to share this information. I hope it was helpful. I was told by everyone, helping Salma and everyone, saying that you were a tremendous group and just wonderful, and I feel the love. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here today, and thanks to Eduardo and Bill for making all of this happen as well. And Marilyn, wherever you are, Marilyn, thank you. Thank you very much, you guys.
Lynda, Bill,
Yes.
and Eduardo, I just wanted to take a moment and thank you for taking us behind the scenes to see the tremendous amount of thought, energy, time, the great passion, and the extraordinary creativity that you and your teams around the world contribute to creating those magical moments and helping us build the brand for our guests and consumers around the world. So thank you very much
You're
for that.
welcome.
Another round of applause.
You're welcome. Oh my gosh.
And to recognize the time that you spent with us, thank you for coming many miles. We have
goodness.
a diploma and a statue to recognize your
beautiful.
contributions to Expo Learning.
Thank you
Thank
so
you very much.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Let's go create some
Thank
magical
you.
moments.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Yes.
I was asked to say something to you. I know Richard was really eloquent.
Eloquent? Yes.
Eloquent.
Yes.
But I wanted to tell you how significant for all of us, the cast members from the Walt Disney Company in Mexico, is for you three to be here. We are thrilled to receive your training because you gave us one of the most treasure presents that we have in the company, that is our characters. And I can truly assure you that everyone who is in this room, from the bottom of the heart, appreciate what you shared, what you three shared, and what you usually do every day, because we have many lines of business here. We have DCP, we have video, we have in-home, we have out-home, but bottom line, we do not reach out as you do every day, the magic. And I do believe personally, and I feel that I'm speaking on behalf of everyone who is in this room. You touch us and you gave us a lot of magic. So I really, truly appreciate what you did today. So thank you very much for sharing the magic.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you. We're honored, really. I could cry. I think I'm going to cry. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.